sisters.
Awesome. And today's episode of His Greater Purpose 2.0 is to talk about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And as everyone may or may not know, every October this is an awareness month to really bring in the forefront different levels of abuse, domestic violence, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, different types of levels of abuse. And Charity and I are both advocates for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I served on a local board for a few years with a local domestic violence shelter, among some other things, and we'll go into that in a little bit. But I'll let Charity open us up and kind of talk about domestic violence and what that is from her standpoint.
Well, thank you for that lovely intro. But domestic violence is something that is near and dear to my heart because most times it is overlooked. It is not addressed at the time that a person is victimized in the situation. And so often in the month of October, most people focus their attention on breast cancer awareness and they tend to overlook domestic violence awareness. And so I am truly an advocate. You'll see I have my purple on today and my little earrings because I want to make sure that the people who feel voiceless will no longer feel like their voice is not heard, that when they're trying to cry out, that they have no outlet or nobody will listen to them, no one will believe them, or people think that they are weak. It is near and dear to me because it is something that I have experienced in my own life. At a young age, I'll say young adult age, in my early 20s, being in an abusive relationship. So I really try to, as I have grown and I have overcome that area in my life, that era, I try to make sure that I advocate for those who are current victims and those who have come out of that same situation, but they don't have the courage to actually speak upon it. So people think about domestic violence and they think it's all about, the physical abuse, but no, it's far surpasses the physical abuse, but it's also about the mental and the verbal abuse that comes along with it, because before you are even touched physically, that's how they begin to manipulate your mind by the mental, the emotional, and the verbal abuse. So that is something that we really want to bring a lot of awareness to, because just as cancer takes lives, so does abuse. I mean, it takes lives. People, young women have lost their lives to the hands of another man or woman simply because they felt inferior. The other person felt inferior. They felt jealous, different reasons why people abuse others. But today we are making sure that we are being a voice to those who feel like they don't have a voice, who are
Well, thank you, Charity, for sharing your story. And what a lot of people do not realize is that domestic violence comes in all forms. A lot of times you hear of the physical aspect of domestic violence. However, and I'm not a trained therapist or anything like that, but I will say that serving on the board and just some experiences I've had in my life, that that fear is very real for people that endure domestic violence, whether it's mental, emotional, physical. It's very real. And one thing that I hear sometimes people say that don't understand, they say, well, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just get out the situation? And there's so many barriers to that. You know, you got to take into account if this person is used to a chain of abuse or if this person is a victim themselves from the past. Like, you just have to look at a lot of things. Sometimes it's a financial thing. Sometimes people can't afford to leave or they're scared of what might happen if they do leave. And with some situations, just in my time on the board, I learned that a lot of times those victims and those that survive it have a lot of other internal things going on with them too. They might have children. They may not be the main source of income for their family. It's just so many layers to it. And it's really a serious issue that people sometimes don't take as serious as they probably should. But with that being said, another thing that might surprise people, and I learned this a few years ago, is that men can also suffer from domestic violence. We always hear about women and even children with abuse, but there are a lot of men that are scared to speak up about domestic violence. And it's a very serious issue that expands from women, children, teens, even with dating. I've heard a lot of stories of young teenagers and young adults that are in domestic violence situations, and sometimes they don't even realize that they're in it. Sometimes they don't know that what they're going through is not normal, it's not healthy. It's very toxic. It's very dangerous. And some people do not even realize that they're in those situations until something either drastic happens or something kind of shows them that they are in a domestic violence situation.
That is absolutely true. The first thing you said that I want to expound upon is I can't stand when people ask, well, why don't you leave? Or why didn't you leave sooner? Because you never, and people will say, well, I would have left. I would have, you don't know what
We
you would
don't
have
know.
in that situation until you're actually in it. Because I would have been the first to say I would not have stayed in a situation as such. But the truth of the matter is, when you're in that, people manipulate your mind. We, as a woman, as a female, we tend to be emotional sometimes and we become vulnerable. And so a person will begin to play off your vulnerability. They will use that as an advantage. And so they will begin to manipulate your mind, manipulate your thoughts. And for me, it was the embarrassment, for one, the embarrassment of I have put myself in this situation. I know I did, but I don't know how to get out. Not only do I not know how to get out, but I have a kid, not from him, but I had a kid that was involved. And financially, I wasn't in a place where I could just up and move. So there were so many variables that were attached to it, and it's not just so simple because you don't know the type of abuse. There was physical abuse, and there were weapons involved. So you think, okay, well, if I leave and they've threatened your life, if you leave and you go tell, then I will kill you, I will kill your family. So those threats, you thinking, okay, well, I can stay and take this if it means I can spare somebody else's life. I can spare my child's life, I can spare my family's life. And you know that they are capable of doing it because of what they have done to you. So I really want people to understand that it's not just simple to simply walk away. As much as we would like to say that you can just simply move out of the situation, it's not that easy. Strategically, I had to plan my exit. I had to, one day I had been saying that I have to get out of this. I don't want my kid to see this. I don't want this to happen. And so I had to make sure that I had a plan in my mind that I'm going to get out, but how am I going to get out? Who can I tell that would be able to protect me and my child so that we don't suffer from this, we don't lose our lives to this. And it was very close to losing our life, not just mine, but my friends too. You can't hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a difficult situation. I really want people to understand that the worst thing you can say is, why didn't you leave? Why didn't you get out sooner? Because that you already feeling weak, and that just puts a little bit more burden on you, makes you feel a little bit more inferior.
And that's the thing too. We talk a lot about the physical, but you did bring up another point. Is that manipulation is so real, and it bothers me when I hear people say, "Oh, it's just you can just leave." I wouldn't put up with that, but you don't know until you're in that situation what you'll put up with. You don't know what barriers you may be faced with. Luckily for us, we live in a town where we have a local shelter. We have
Right.
resources, but everyone is not aware of those resources in other areas. I think our local shelter does a really good job of being out in the forefront as far as promoting the resources that they have, things that they have going on to support women and children who go through these situations with domestic violence. But that manipulation is such a strong component of abuse because you got to think about it. If you love someone or if you're in a situation with someone, you look past a lot of things. So there's
That's
things
true.
that are happening or being said to you or being planted in your head that you don't even realize is happening. You just don't realize it. And one thing that I learned so much of being on that board for a few years, it was just that because I didn't understand how serious it was until I started on that board. And I realized, oh my God, this happens a lot. It happened to my peers, some of my professors at the local college. I mean, people you never thought of were going through this in silence, and
Right.
they didn't know have nowhere to go. Some people don't have families to depend on. And like you said, the whole money aspect. There's I think of that movie. I don't know. I'm a little bit older than Charity, but there's a movie called Sleeping with the Enemy, and the character was in that same situation. I always think about how that man abused her, and she was in such a state of of fear
Yeah.
that when she finally left, she was constantly just not trusting of people, very enclosed with herself, very scared all the time. And then when he found her, I mean, I won't tell you the end, but the movie is a very
You
good.
just told it.
I know, right? But I'm just saying, like, when you look at the premise of the movie, it's something, other movies like Enough, like, you have these different movies that really highlight that real fear in victims and survivors of domestic violence. I know, especially since COVID's been going on, I saw an article recently. I can't remember where I saw it at, and they were saying how the numbers of domestic violence cases have been going up since we've been in COVID. And that's something that people don't understand. Like, you are putting these people are in situations where they don't have nowhere else to go. We have COVID going on, so resources may or may not be limited. There's so many barriers to that. But it's something that I think in our culture that we don't talk enough of about domestic violence. When we look back at old school situations where people suffered in silence. You never talked about it. People may know what was going on, but you didn't talk about it. You didn't question it. You just knew. And that creates a generational cycle of abuse in a lot of cases. And if we don't address it, if we don't talk about it, if we don't try to find solutions and find and help people out of it and feel comfortable to trust someone to get out of those situations, it's not going to get much better. But Sherry, I just love how you shared your testimony and your story because you are a survivor. You are victorious in what you've overcome. And there's so many people that may not feel comfortable to share their stories just yet. But those that do, it helps others that are in silence that are either going through it or who have survived it.
Right.
So what advice would you give to people that have or are currently going through a domestic violence situation that they're kind of fearful of speaking up about it or getting out of the situation?
My advice would be to seek help. Seek help no matter where you find somebody that you can trust. The one thing that really kept my feet stagnant for a while is the fact that I was so embarrassed that I had allowed this situation to take over my life, that I had allowed myself to be in a place where some I would let somebody take advantage of me because that was not who I was. So my thing is to find somebody who you trust that would assist you in removing yourself from that situation. If you don't have anybody, don't want anybody to know about it, okay, fine. Seek a local shelter. Call the police, call somebody and make sure you let them know that I need assistance and I do want to be I want this to be as confidential as possible. And the thing about it is the local shelter, they will make sure that you're taken care of. They will make sure that you are in a discreet location. I'm a volunteer with the local battered women's shelter. I don't even know what the house is. I just know where the administrative office is. I don't even know where the house is. So they make sure that you are placed in a home where no one can get to you. The police guard it, but get out. I remember the first time that I began to speak about it, and I was still, painfully experiencing things, the trauma from it. And somebody said, you live through something that someone else died from. And that just like literally broke my heart to think that people lose their lives at the hands of someone else or even just commit suicide because they don't feel a way out. And so because of that, it made me want to speak out about it. It made me want to help bring other people out. So there's a hotline that you can call, there's a shelter, you can call the police. And even if you just want somebody that you don't know, you can contact me. I mean, I don't have to know you from a fly on the wall, but I don't mind assisting because we are all in this together. And to know that another life is saved so that she too can pull somebody else out, that is it's all a domino effect just to keep pulling women out. Even like you said, men, but I'm a strong advocate for women,
Right, of course.
but to keep pulling women out because your life matters, your future matters. Like there's a purpose, there's a reason why I had to go through that. And I would hate to for someone else to I would see somebody else go through the same thing and I not assist them. So definitely your life is purposeful, your life has meaning. And don't think just because the manipulation and the abuse that is the end for you, because it is not. There are brighter days, there are better days, there's someone that will love you through your pain, in spite of your pain, and won't love you to the point that it hurts physically or emotionally. So let's do this. Get help as quickly as possible because your life, your legacy is dependent upon it.
Right. And the thing is, too, one thing I do love to see, like you mentioned earlier, we do talk a lot about breast cancer, and breast cancer awareness is just, it's very important too. However, to drag the point is just that with domestic violence, we don't talk about it. We just shy away from it. Even like in different organizations that I'm in, when it comes to like recognizing different awareness days, domestic violence is usually that one and the sexual assault one are usually the two that people are like, not too sure, let's shy away from that. When really it's something that we need to put in the forefront. No matter what race you are, class, anything, domestic violence affects people across the board. It doesn't matter what you look like, what your race is, how much money you make. I've met survivors who are very prestigious in the world, or people that have been phenomenal leaders, and you never knew that they were going home to a domestic violence situation. You never knew that they were always fearful of their whereabouts or who they were around or what they were a part of, what they were doing. And that fear is very real. And I think if we can understand that it's not something you could just walk away from, it's not something that you can just, be out there like, I'm just leaving, I'm gone. It's not that simple. If it was simple, we wouldn't be having the numbers that we have with domestic violence victims and advocates like us. Like you have to understand that it takes a lot of courage to leave a situation. And sometimes, I mean, I've met people that left with nothing and they survived, they overcame it. And that fear of what's next, what's to come, the fear of the unknown is very real. One thing I cannot stand is when I hear someone say, "Well, they chose that situation because they stayed there." That's not really fair to say because, like I said, there's so many barriers to why people stay stuck in those situations. I don't want to say stay, but are stuck in those situations. And if you've been manipulated and mentally, emotionally, spiritually broken down, you just never know. You can be the strongest person, but you never know just how much you can get in someone's head and really get them to where they're doubtful or they're fearful like that. It's a very I don't remember the word for it, but it's a word for it as far as you being groomed to slowly be transitioned into that manipulation belief of things. And it
Mhm.
might not be like you question yourself, you doubt yourself, you get scared, and it's very real. And I mentioned the men because recently I met a young man, real young, and he's married, and his wife calls him out his name, hits him, embarrasses him, makes more money than he does. And I was so surprised because I'm just like, he's really young to be dealing with all this, like it just shocked me. And before I got off the board for the local shelter, that was something they saw an increased number in was that the young men were being abused and not leaving their situations. And that's not to say that the women are not, I mean, women, of course, the numbers are a lot higher. But it just showed me that domestic violence sees no gender, no anything. It happens in situations that are not very well you wouldn't believe in. Like I said, a lot of people sit in silence. A lot of people deal with it. And you don't want to be someone that knows about. I know for me, if I know someone that's in a situation, there's times where I'm trying to encourage them, support them, whatever they need, anything I can do, resources. But at the end of the day, that's the person that's going to have to deal with the outcome of that decision. So they're the one that has to deal with that fear and that concern about if this person's going to follow me, they're going to find me, they're going to hurt me, they're going to hurt my children if there's children involved. Like there's so many layers to it.
That's it. And it's such a taboo because as opposed to cancer, we can't predict cancer. I mean, we don't know that we're going to get it. Obviously, we don't know that we're going to be in an abusive relationship. There are signs that will point to it and we can ignore them quite often. But, the stigma is it's an avoidable situation.
I think your computer paused, Charity.
Oh, am I
Oh, there
paused?
you go. You're back.
It's an avoidable situation technically, but so many times so many times it's not. You don't know it. You don't see it coming. And by the time that you realize that you're in it, you're so deep in it that it's hard to get out of it. And so it's such a taboo because the fear of people looking at you differently, people will look at you like you're inferior, like you're weak, like, you've been knocked out or something. And it's not even that. And I think the most courageous person that comes out of it is a hero because you were able to save your life. I don't think it's a sign of weakness, but it's a sign of strength that through all of this, all the mess that you had to go through, that you allowed yourself to still see the light and pull yourself out of it and just walk away, run away, however you had to do it, run away from. But people don't want to talk about it because it makes you feel weak. You already feel weak by allowing someone to come in and invade your space mentally, physically, and emotionally, but then having to verbalize that and admit that, okay, I've allowed this is really difficult to do. So there's a healing process that takes place where you have to admit it to yourself. Then you start, talking about it, work through it, writing about it, however you need to do it before you actually begin to help people and bring them through. Because for a long, like you said at the beginning, for a long time I didn't even know that that's what it was. I mean, of course, if I see it from the outside looking in, oh yeah, girl, you're getting abused. But in my head, I'm like, I'm just, this is just how this relationship is. He crazy. I'm finna act a little crazy too. But then he got a little bit crazy, and I was like, okay, something ain't right.
Right.
Something ain't right. Now you pulling
And
out
the crazy thing too is that people tend to judge you too, whether you stay or whether you go. There's still this sense of judgment for some reason. Because if you leave, then people think, oh, he didn't do that to her, she didn't do that to him. But people don't know. Unless they're in that situation, they have no idea what somebody could put on a very good mask publicly. And unless you shared space with that person or with that person, especially for a significant time, no one knows what you've been through, what you've endured, unless they've been in that house with you or in that situation with you. And so I find it kind of interesting that if a woman or even a man, whatever, but if a woman stays in a situation for whatever reason, because it's financial, because of fear, whatever the case may be, there's a sense of judgment for some reason that she's staying. But then if she goes, there's a sense of judgment for that too. So you can't really focus on what people think or what they'll say to you, because if you stay or you go, because it's your life and your safety is involved. And if you have another component, which is children and family, that's a whole different fear level of fear too. And I find it interesting because every family is different, but some families they'll speak up about it. They'll say, "Hey, this person, I don't like how this person's treating you." And but then sometimes the family or friends are in a vulnerable situation too, because if you're not able to receive the concerns that they see or the red flags that they see in an abusive relationship that you're in or intertwined in, then that can cause them kind of fear also to even bring it up and to even bring you a knowledge about it. So sometimes you have to really take heed or take consideration what your family or friends are saying, because a lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of times, it's a real concern on your family and your friends' concern part too. Um, I've met people that I've had friends who, I try to let them know some of the red flags I was concerned about. Oh, it's fine, it's fine. And then years later, it was like, Shara, that was happening. And I was scared. And I was scared about what people thought. And I was worried about what he might do. And it's like to know that
that.
your friend or family has been through that and you feel so helpless. Like, what can I do to help you get out of the situation? And I think one of them, and Cherry, you can definitely target this some more, but I think it's to be support, be that soundboard for that person, be that safe place for that person that's going through it. Whether they tell you about it or not, just be there and be available.
Right. And don't be judgmental. People don't want to talk about it because they don't want to hear, well, I told you so, or you shouldn't have done it in the first place, or I don't know why you shouldn't look. I mean, nobody wants to hear that when they're going through. You
Right.
don't hear it when you're down. I didn't want to hear, oh, well, you shouldn't have got with him in the first place. We told you not to. That's not what I want to hear right now when I'm trying to get myself together and regain my confidence back, because it strips you of a lot of your self-esteem, your confidence. And so to have someone close to you to treat you that way, and then you go look for help through close friends, and that's what their response is. I mean, it just dampens your spirit, and it betrays your trust. It takes you to a different level. And so you don't want to hear all that. You don't want to hear I told you so. You don't want to hear you shoulda, woulda, coulda. Well, I did, and this is what happened. So let's just accept it how it is.
And it's not supportive, because the
Right.
last thing you want to do is feel like I'm coming to you in confidence about something that literally could be put my life on the line.
Correct.
And instead of being supportive, I feel closed out now, scared to even tell you anything, because you're either going to judge me or tell everybody or go to the abuser. There's been situations where the person, friends, family will go to the abuser, not knowing that this person really is abusing, being abusive, being all these things that this person's telling you. And you go right to the hands of the person that's doing it and tell them everything that that person told you in confidence. Then you're putting that person's life at risk also. I
Like
don't care if it's
it is.
your brother, cousin, friend. Go ahead, Sherry. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but that's what, and people do that too. They try to take the situation in their hand. No, 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 no. You don't know what I've gone through. You don't know the threats. And that could even heighten the situation. That could make it worse. So, no, if they go to you in confidence, you keep that. No matter how much you want to tell it, you keep that. You don't go confront the person, because when you confront the person, they get mad, and then the victim will have to deal with that too. So no, let's try to be a little bit more strategic, because you don't know how it will play out for them. We never know. So you just
You still there, Charity? I think your sound went out again.
am I okay now?
Okay, yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, I got a little caught up. I said if you're not able to be that support for them and provide a way of escape, then you point them in a direction where they can get help, where they can find a way out, instead of trying to take it into your own hands, because that will make a mess out of it.
Right. And it's not for gossiping. It's to really, you're really putting somebody's life in danger by speaking up on it to the wrong people, to going to the person that is being, that's doing the abuse. You just gotta be very mindful of that. Um, and just be more aware of the, like you said, the strategy in that, because that could literally be putting that person in a deeper situation that she or he cannot get out of. Charity, did you want to share that hotline number you mentioned earlier?
Yes, absolutely. And y'all, I had it pulled up. Hopefully my phone don't die before I get it back up for you. But there are so many avenues that you can take. There is a hotline, and let me give you all that information. And let me tell you, once you call the hotline number, it's so funny, because you'll become, it won't even show up on your phone anymore. But the number is 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. And 1-800-799-7233. If you suspect that somebody is going through an abusive situation, if you are someone, call this number, get help. Someone will be that will guide you, a professional actually, they will guide you through the
Your sound went off again, chat.
Are we good now?
Yes.
1-800-799-7233. I just want to make sure that y'all have that number so that you can get help and get out.
Well, I just want to thank you, Terry. I love doing these Facebook Live shows with you. And I just thank you so much for sharing your testimony, your story, because that, will help so many people. And for those of you that are going through domestic violence or have survived it and just not comfortable to talk about it publicly, just know that it's okay. This
Yes.
is your story. You don't have to share it with everybody. But if you do, know that you are really helping other people deal and overcome with the abuse that they're having to deal with. So thank you, Charity, for just being just a vessel and being transparent about your experience, because that really does help a lot of people.
Thank you. I'm glad I could share, and hopefully that this will touch someone. I know the sound keeps going out, but I feel like the sound keeps going out because there is.
See, there you go again. Yeah, it went out again, Charity.
You let me know when I'm back on.
You back on.
Back on.
Every time you start getting to the meat of it, that's when it happens.
Oh, y'all just be free. That's all I gotta say. Y'all just be free.
But thank you again, Charity, and I look forward to meeting with you again next month for our His Their Purpose episode. We don't have the subject just yet, but we'll have it soon. Hopefully, we have, especially Charity, has shared something that is helpful to you all. And again, thank you for joining us on the His Greater Purpose 2.0 Facebook Live. And we look for many, many more opportunities in the future. Thank you all.